What would you do if your ex-girlfriend was stealing thousands to destroy your career and framed you for her crimes? I never thought my accounting degree would come in handy before I even graduated, but here we are. My name is Ezra Kim. I'm 24 years old, and up until 3 months ago I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I was working as a server at the Prime Cut, this upscale steakhouse downtown where the average chick runs about $200 per couple, finishing my last year of accounting at State and dating Isla Thompson, one of the shift managers. Everything felt stable, like I was building towards something real. Then Isla dumped me out of nowhere on a Tuesday night after her shift, said she needed space to figure herself out, that we wanted different things. I was devastated, but I tried to be mature about it. We still had to work together after all, and I put 3 years into this job with a spotless record. I couldn't afford to let a breakup mess that up, not when I needed every paycheck to cover my $12,000 tuition bill for my final semester. The first write-up came 2 weeks after the breakup. I was standing in the kitchen waiting for Table 7's order when Marcus Powell, the general manager, called me into his office. He had this uncomfortable look on his face, like he didn't want to be having the conversation. He slid a yellow incident report across his desk and I read it with growing disbelief. According to the report, I had been rude to a customer 3 days prior, rolled my eyes when they asked for modifications, and delivered their entrees with an attitude that made them complain to management. The thing is, I remembered that table. It was a nice older couple celebrating their anniversary. They tipped me 28%, and the woman specifically told me I provided excellent service. I said exactly that to Marcus. He sighed and rubbed his temples. Marcus is a good guy, been in the industry for 20 years, the kind of manager who actually has your back. He said, "Look, Ezra, I know you're a solid server, your numbers are great and I've never had complaints about you, but this came from Isla and she documented everything. The couple apparently spoke to her on their way out. There's nothing I can do, this goes in your file as a verbal warning." I left his office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Why would Isla lie about something like that? We'd ended things relatively amicably, or so I thought. Sure, it was awkward working together, but I'd been nothing but professional. I tried to push it out of my mind, told myself maybe she genuinely misunderstood something, maybe the couple had been confused about which server they had. The second write-up came 3 weeks later. This time the report claimed I'd showed up 15 minutes late for my shift and Marcus had to scramble to cover my section. Except I have this thing where I'm obsessively punctual. It's basically a personality flaw at this point. I showed Marcus my time clock punch from that day. It clearly showed me clocking in 12 minutes early like I always do. He looked at the report again, looked at my punch record, and his expression got really dark. He said, "This doesn't make sense, Ezra. These timestamps don't match up at all. Let me look into this." But the write-up had already been filed with corporate. It was in the system. Marcus said he disputed, but the damage was done. I was now officially on thin ice. One more incident and I'd be terminated. That's when I started paying closer attention to what was happening around me. I noticed Isla had gotten cozy with this regular customer named Carter Walsh. Carter was one of those guys who thinks spending money makes him important, you know the type. Mid-30s, always dressed in expensive but slightly tacky suits, talked loud, laughed louder. He'd started coming in about 6 months ago, usually once a week with a small group. But in the last few months his visits had increased dramatically, twice a week now, always with these massive groups of 8 to 12 people. And Isla always made sure she was managing on the nights Carter came in. I watched from the server station one night as Carter's group of 10 racked up a bill of $567. Steaks, top-shelf liquor, expensive wine, appetizers, desserts, the works. When the server brought the chick to Carter, he made a big show of pulling out his credit card. But then Isla appeared at the table, all smiles, touched Carter's shoulder in this familiar way that made my stomach turn, and I saw her subtly shake her head. The server came back to the POS system looking confused and told me Isla comped the entire table. $567, just gone. I kept my mouth shut, but I started watching more carefully. The next week Carter came in on a Thursday with 12 people. Their bill was $612. Isla comped it again. The week after that, $348, comped. The pattern was undeniable once you knew to look for it. I did some quick math in my head. Carter had been coming in twice a week for what? 14 weeks now based on when I first noticed the increase in frequency. If Isla was comping $300 to $600 each visit, that was $9,400 minimum in free meals. Nearly $10,000. My accounting brain was screaming that this was fraud, this was theft, this was going to get someone fired. And I had a sinking feeling about who that someone was meant to be. The third write-up appeared in my file a week later. This one claimed I'd messed up 3 separate orders in one shift, delivering wrong temperatures on steaks and forgetting sides. The problem was, I wasn't even working that day. I was at the university taking my advanced financial accounting exam. I had the exam schedule, I had my parking receipt from campus, I had everything. When I showed Marcus the evidence, his face went red with anger. He said, "Someone is setting you up, Ezra, and I think we both know who. But I need proof, real proof, because if I accuse a manager of falsifying reports without evidence, corporate will crucify me." I needed to be smart about this. I needed to document everything. I started keeping a detailed log of my shifts, screenshots of my clock and times, photos of my receipts from any purchases I made on days off to prove my location. I also started quietly asking other servers if they'd noticed anything weird going on. That's when things got interesting. Maya Flores, one of the senior servers who'd worked at the Prime Cut for 6 years, pulled me aside during a slow Tuesday lunch shift. She said, "You asked about Isla doing something fishy, right? You should know she's been pulling this comp thing for weeks now, but always during other managers' shifts, never her own. I've seen her at the POS terminal on nights when Daniel Reed or Sofia Martinez are the shift managers, using her code to comp huge checks for their Carter guys' tables." I asked her why she hadn't reported it. Maya gave me this tired look and said, "Isla told us corporate authorized it, said Carter was some kind of VIP rewards member. But the numbers don't add up, Ezra. We don't have a rewards program that gives away $10,000 in free food." My heart was pounding. This was bigger than I thought. Isla wasn't just comping meals, she was doing it strategically to avoid detection and possibly framing other managers for it. I needed access to the POS system logs. Here's where having friends in unexpected places paid off. My buddy Julian Hayes works in IT for the restaurant group that owns the Prime Cut. We went to high school together. He got me the job here in the first place. I called him after my shift and explained what was going on, leaving out nothing. Julian was quiet for a long moment and then said, "I can pull those logs for you, Ezra, but you need to understand this is serious. If what you're saying is true, Isla's committing theft and fraud. You need to be absolutely sure before we go down this road." I told him I was sure. 2 days later, Julian met me at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the restaurant with a flash drive. He looked nervous, kept glancing around like we were in some kind of spy movie. He slid the drive across the table and said, "This has every POS transaction for the last 4 months, including manager override codes, comp authorizations, and timestamps. I also pulled the physical comp slips from the filing system, the ones that need manager signatures. You're going to want to look at those real carefully." I spent that entire night going through the data on my laptop. What I found made me physically ill. Isla had comped 43 separate transactions over 14 weeks, totaling $9,473. Every single one was for Carter Walsh's tables. But here's what made it worse. She'd done 31 of those comps during shifts when other managers were supposed to be overseeing the floor. The POS log showed her manager code being used, but the physical comp slips that Julian had scanned for me showed signatures that weren't hers. She'd forged Daniel Reed's signature on 17 slips. She'd forged Sofia Martinez's signature on 14 slips. If anyone looked into this casually, it would look like Daniel and Sofia had been authorizing these comps, not Isla. She'd been systematically framing 2 other managers while stealing nearly $10,000 worth of food and beverage. And the fake write-ups about me, those were her insurance policy. If I noticed the comps and tried to report them, who would believe the server who was supposedly rude to customers, late to shifts, and messing up orders? She was destroying my credibility preemptively. I sat back in my desk chair feeling dizzy. This was so much worse than a bad breakup. This was calculated, methodical, almost sociopathic. But I still needed more evidence. I needed to prove Isla had written those fake incident reports about me. Julian had mentioned something about security footage being archived for 90 days. The restaurant had cameras everywhere, in the dining room, behind the bar, in the kitchen, and in the back offices where managers did paperwork. If Isla had written those fake reports at work, there might be footage of it. I called Julian again. He sounded stressed when he answered, but he listened to what I needed. He said, "The security system is separate from my usual access, but I know the guy who manages it. Let me see what I can do. Give me a few days." While I waited, I kept working my shifts, kept smiling at customers, kept being the professional server I'd always been. But inside I was wound tight as a spring. Isla seemed to sense something was different. She kept watching me during shifts with this calculating expression, like she was waiting for me to make a mistake. On Friday night, exactly 1 week after I'd first looked at the POS logs, Isla pulled me aside after the dinner rush. We were in the back hallway near the walk-in coolers, no cameras there, nobody around. She stepped close to me, too close, and her voice was low and hard. She said, "I know you've been asking questions, Ezra, talking to the other servers about me and Carter. You need to stop." I played dumb, said I didn't know what she was talking about. Isla laughed, but there was no humor in it. She said, "Don't insult my intelligence. Maya told me about your little conversation. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep your mouth shut and mind your own business, or I will make sure you never work in this city again. You think 3 write-ups are bad? Just wait. I can document anything I want and Marcus will have to fire you. Then good luck getting hired anywhere else when they call for references and hear about what a problem employee you were." My hands were shaking, but I managed to keep my voice steady. I said, "You're stealing from the restaurant, Isla. You know that, right? What you're doing with Carter is theft." She smiled, actually smiled, and said, "Prove it. You're a server, I'm a manager. Who do you think corporate will believe? Now get back to work." I had my phone in my back pocket. It had been recording the entire conversation. Julian came through with the security footage 3 days later. We met at the same coffee shop, and this time he had his laptop with him. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept, and he said, "You owe me big time for this, Ezra. I had to call in favors I've been saving for years." He opened his laptop and pulled up a video file. The timestamp showed it was from 5 weeks ago, mid-afternoon on a Wednesday. The camera angle showed the manager's office from above, a wide shot that captured the desk and the filing cabinets. Isla walked into frame carrying a clipboard and a pen. For the next 12 minutes, I watched as she sat at the desk and carefully, methodically, wrote out 3 separate incident reports. She kept checking her phone for something, probably making sure the timestamps she was inventing were plausible. She signed each report with her own signature at the bottom, then filed them in the personnel cabinet under my name. Those were my 3 fake write-ups. I was watching her fabricate them in real time on archived footage. Julian pulled up 2 more videos. Both showed similar scenes, Isla at the POS terminal during other managers' shifts, entering her override code to comp large checks, then going to the filing area where physical comp slips were stored and carefully signing other managers' names on the authorization line. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but you could clearly see what she was doing, the way she practiced the signatures a few times on scrap paper first to get them right. I felt like I'd swallowed ice. Julian said, "This is felony-level stuff, Ezra. Forgery, theft, fraud. You need to take this to someone with authority, not just Marcus." He was right. Marcus was a good guy, but this was above his pay grade. I needed to go higher. The Prime Cut was owned by the Harrison Restaurant Group, which operated 12 high-end establishments across the state. The district manager was a woman named Victoria Sanders, known for being sharp, fair, and absolutely intolerant of anything that made the company look bad. The owner, Gregory Harrison himself, was semi-retired but still involved in major decisions. I spent 2 days organizing everything into a comprehensive file. I had the POS logs showing all 43 comps with Isla's manager code, the scanned physical comp slips showing forged signatures, the security footage of her writing fake incident reports and forging comp authorizations, the recording of her threatening me in the hallway, and a detailed written timeline of everything that had happened. I also reached out to Daniel Reed and Sophia Martinez separately. I showed them the forged comp slips with their signatures. Both of them were furious. Daniel said, "I could lose my job over this if corporate thought I was authorizing $10,000 in comps for some random customer." Sophia said, I have a family to support. If Isla's been setting me up, I want her buried. They both agreed to give statements backing up my claims. On Monday morning, I called Victoria Sanders' office and asked for an emergency meeting. Her assistant tried to schedule me for the following week, but I said, this involves theft, fraud, and forgery at the Prime Cut location. It cannot wait. She put me on hold for 2 minutes and then said, Miss Sanders can see you today at 4 o'clock. Be on time and bring documentation. I arrived at the corporate office at 3:45 with my laptop, my flash drive, printed copies of everything, and a sick feeling in my stomach. This was it, the moment where either justice happened or my entire life fell apart. Victoria Sanders' office was on the 8th floor with a view of downtown. She was in her 50s, gray hair and a perfect bob, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She gestured to a chair across from her massive desk and said, You have 20 minutes, make it count. I made it count. I walked her through everything in chronological order, starting with the breakup, the fake write-ups, my discovery of the comps, the forged signatures, all of it. I showed her the POS logs first, then the physical comp slips, then the security footage. Her expression got darker and darker as I went through each piece of evidence. When I played her the recording of Isla threatening me, Victoria stopped the audio halfway through and said, Do you have copies of all of this? I said yes, multiple copies in multiple secure locations. She picked up her phone and made a call. She said, Gregory, I need you in my office right now. We have a serious situation. Then she looked at me and said, Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. Gregory Harrison arrived 10 minutes later. He was in his late 60s, distinguished looking, the kind of man who probably played golf with senators. Victoria briefed him quickly while I sat there trying not to panic. Gregory watched the security footage twice, his jaw getting tighter each time. Then he looked at me and said, You're Ezra Kim, been with us 3 years, finishing an accounting degree, is that correct? I nodded. He said, Marcus has always said you're one of his best servers, reliable, professional, good with numbers. I'm guessing that's why you spotted this when others didn't. I said, Yes, sir, the amounts were too large and too frequent to be legitimate comps. Any basic audit would have caught it. Gregory exchanged a look with Victoria. She said, We run monthly audits on comps, but they're automated. They flag amounts over a certain threshold at individual manager level. Isla spread these across multiple manager codes, so none of them individually hit the threshold. It was smart, in a criminal kind of way. Gregory stood up and said, Victoria, call our legal team and contact the police. This is theft over $10,000, which makes it grand larceny in this state. Also call Daniel Reed and Sophia Martinez. Get them in here today to give statements. He looked at me again and said, Ezra, you did the right thing bringing this to us. I want you to know that. This could have cost us a lot more if it had continued. Go home, take the rest of the week off with pay, and do not speak to Isla Thompson under any circumstances. We'll handle it from here. I left the corporate office feeling like I was floating. My hands were still shaking, but it was from adrenaline now, not fear. The next 3 days were a blur. Julian texted me that Isla had been escorted out of the Prime Cut by police on Tuesday afternoon. Maya called me that night and said the entire staff was buzzing about it. Apparently corporate had come in with investigators and Isla had been arrested on the premises for theft and fraud. Carter Walsh had also been banned from all Harrison Restaurant Group properties for life. Marcus called me on Thursday and asked me to come in for a meeting. When I arrived at his office, he looked tired but relieved. He said, I owe you an apology, Ezra. I should have pushed harder on those write-ups when they didn't make sense. Corporate has expunged all 3 from your record and you're getting back pay for the shifts you would have worked if you hadn't been written up and sent home early those times. He slid an envelope across the desk and said, That's a check for $843, plus corporate wants to offer you the shift manager position Isla vacated. $15 an hour pay increase, benefits, and they'll work around your class schedule. I sat there stunned. I said, Are you serious? Marcus smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. He said, You proved yourself, Ezra, not just as a good employee but as someone with integrity and attention to detail. Those are exactly the qualities we need in management. What do you say? I took the promotion. My first week as shift manager was intense, but in a good way. The staff was supportive, glad to have someone they trusted in the role. Daniel Reed and Sophia Martinez both pulled me aside separately to thank me for clearing their names. Sophia said, "Corporate told us if you hadn't caught this we could have been scapegoated when it inevitably came to light. You saved our jobs." Daniel went further. He said, "I'm moving to the new Harrison restaurant opening across town next month as general manager. I want you to know I'm going to write you the strongest recommendation letter possible for whatever comes next in your career. You're going to go far, kid." My first official act as shift manager was implementing a new transparent comp logging system. Every comp now requires 2 manager signatures, real-time photo documentation of the reason, and immediate notification to the general manager. No more opportunities for someone to abuse the system like Isla did. The legal side of things played out over the next 2 months. Isla was formally charged with grand larceny, fraud, and forgery. The district attorney was pushing hard because it involved forged documents and systematic theft from a business. Carter Walsh was questioned but ultimately not charged since technically he hadn't known the meals were being stolen, though everyone involved knew he'd absolutely been aware something shady was happening. Isla's lawyer tried to get her a plea deal, but Victoria Sanders and Gregory Harrison refused to settle for anything less than full restitution and a felony conviction. They made it clear that anyone who stole from their company and endangered their other employees would face maximum consequences. In the end, Isla pleaded guilty to avoid trial. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours community service, and ordered to pay back the full $9,473 plus damages. She also had to write formal apology letters to me, Daniel, and Sophia, which she did in the most begrudging possible way. Her restaurant management career was effectively over. No one in the industry would touch her with a felony fraud conviction on her record. Carter Walsh disappeared from our orbit entirely. Last I heard, he'd moved to another state after his social circle found out he'd been getting nearly $10,000 in free meals through his girlfriend's theft scheme. Turns out people don't like being associated with that kind of thing. As for me, I finished my accounting degree with a 4.0 GPA in my final semester. Turns out when you're not constantly stressed about losing your job and being falsely accused of things, you can really focus on your studies. The whole experience had given me an unexpected appreciation for forensic accounting, the kind of work that involves investigating fraud and financial crimes. During graduation, I got job offers from 3 different accounting firms. 2 of them specifically mentioned being impressed by my real-world experience catching fraud at my restaurant job. I ended up accepting a position at a mid-sized firm that specializes in restaurant and hospitality industry accounting. The pay is way better than serving, even better than shift managing, and I get to use all those skills I developed tracking Isla's theft scheme. Marcus is still the general manager at the Prime Cut, and we still grab lunch sometimes. The restaurant is doing better than ever actually. Turns out not hemorrhaging $10,000 in fraudulent comps helps the bottom line. Marcus was promoted to regional manager last month, overseeing 4 Harrison Restaurant Group locations now. Julian Hayes got a nice bonus from corporate for his help with the investigation, plus a commendation in his personnel file. He's still in IT, but he jokes now that he's the go-to guy for any forensic data recovery needs. We still meet at that same coffee shop sometimes and laugh about how we accidentally became amateur detectives. Maya Flores and the other servers who supported me through everything got bonuses too. Gregory Harrison made sure of that. He told the entire staff at a company-wide meeting that employees who report fraud and protect the company's integrity would always be rewarded, not punished. It was a clear message that the culture Isla had tried to create, one where people stayed quiet out of fear, was over. The most satisfying moment came about 6 months after everything went down. I was working a Friday night shift, busy dining room, everything running smoothly. A couple at table 12 asked to speak to the manager, and my heart did that little skip it still does sometimes, residual anxiety from the Isla situation. But when I went over, they were smiling. The man said, "We've been coming here for years and we just wanted to say the service and management have never been better. Whatever changes you all made in the last few months, keep it up." I thanked him and explained I'd recently been promoted to shift manager. The woman said, "Well, you're doing a wonderful job. We can tell this place is run by people who care." After they left, I stood in the kitchen for a moment just breathing. This was what good management looked like, what honest work felt like when you weren't constantly watching your back or worrying about sabotage. This was what I'd been working toward all along. Looking back now, almost a year later, I can see how the entire experience changed my trajectory. If Isla had never tried to frame me, if I'd never caught her theft scheme, I'd probably still be serving tables and finishing my degree with no clear direction. Instead, I got thrown into this situation that forced me to use every skill I had: accounting knowledge, attention to detail, documentation, strategic thinking, all of it. I learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to you end up redirecting you towards something better. I learned that integrity matters more than anything else in professional life, that cutting corners and hurting people to get ahead always catches up with you eventually. I learned that good people will support you when you stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. Most importantly, I learned that I never want to be the kind of person who abuses whatever power they have. As a shift manager now, I make sure every single person on my team knows they can come to me with concerns without fear of retaliation. I document everything properly, I follow every policy, I treat people with respect. Not because I'm afraid of getting caught doing something wrong, but because I remember exactly what it felt like to be on the receiving end of abuse of power. Isla taught me what kind of manager never to become. The last I heard about her, she was working some kind of administrative job in a completely different industry, nothing where she'd have access to money or authority over others. Her social media disappeared, her friends moved on, and the life she'd been building while stealing from our restaurant evaporated. Meanwhile, Carter Walsh is apparently engaged to someone new in whatever state he fled to, probably running the same kind of scam where he uses people to get free things. They deserve each other, honestly. As for me, I'm exactly where I want to be. I've got a career I'm excited about. I'm using my degree to catch financial fraud and help businesses protect themselves. And I still pick up shifts at the Prime Cut sometimes on weekends because I genuinely enjoy the work and the people. Marcus keeps trying to promote me to assistant general manager, but I've explained I'm committed to my accounting career for now. Maybe someday I'll come back to restaurant management full-time, but right now I'm learning too much in forensic accounting. The whole experience taught me something my accounting professors never could, that numbers always tell a story if you know how to read them. Isla's theft showed up clear as day once I knew what to look for: 43 transactions that didn't make sense, timestamps that didn't align, patterns that screamed fraud. In my current job, I use those same skills to help restaurant owners spot employee theft, vendor fraud, inventory discrepancies, all the ways people try to steal from businesses. I'm good at it too. Really good. Turns out nearly getting fired by your ex-girlfriend who was committing felony theft gives you excellent pattern recognition skills for financial crimes. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what Isla did, if I hold a grudge. Honestly, no. I'm grateful. She pushed me into discovering abilities I didn't know I had, into standing up for myself and others, into building a career that matters. She also gave me an incredible story for job interviews. Nothing says attention to detail and ethical behavior quite like successfully investigating and reporting a $10,000 theft scheme. The best revenge isn't anger or bitterness, it's building a better life than the person who tried to tear you down. It's succeeding so thoroughly that their attempts to destroy you become nothing more than a funny story you tell at parties. It's knowing that while they're dealing with probation and a felony record and a ruined reputation, you're thriving in ways they never imagined possible. I won. Not because I destroyed Isla, the legal system and her own actions did that. I won because I refused to let her destroy me, because I documented everything, because I stood up when it would have been easier to stay quiet, because I trusted that doing the right thing mattered even when it was terrifying. And now I get to help other people do the same thing, spotting fraud, building cases, protecting honest workers from the kind of scheme Isla ran. Every time I catch something suspicious in an audit, every time I help a client identify theft or fraud, I think about those nights poring over POS logs in my apartment, about Julian's nervous face in that coffee shop, about Marcus saying someone was setting me up but he needed proof. I think about how close I came to losing everything because someone else decided to be dishonest. And then I make sure that doesn't happen to anyone else on my watch. That's justice. That's closure. That's a good ending to what started as the worst period of my life. I'm 25 now, got my degree, got a career, got my integrity intact, and I sleep perfectly fine at night knowing I did everything right. Isla's out there somewhere still paying off her restitution, still dealing with the consequences of her choices. Carter's probably found some other person to manipulate into giving him free things. Daniel and Sophia are both thriving in their careers. Marcus is crushing it as regional manager. Julian's still the IT wizard who saves the day. And me, I'm the guy who turned getting framed by his ex into a successful career in forensic accounting. Life's funny that way sometimes.